before you start hating this video because of the title, please just let me explain. Not great is a wide spectrum, and if you stick around to the end of the video where I give my personal rating, you'll see that I actually enjoy this album. And don't skip to the rating right now, because this album and the surrounding circumstances are way too complex to just compress it into one number, so let's get into the review. Just last year, Architects released For Those That Wish to Exist, an album that saw them experiment and deviate from what fans were used to. It earned them a lot of love from their fans and a lot of hate from a specific type of crowd. If there's no chugga chugga bleh in a song, then it sucks. Personally, I loved the album. It was great to see them expand their sound like that. It made it into my top 10 albums of last year, and even more recently, they released a live orchestral version live at Abbey Road of that very same album just earlier this year. That means Classic Symptoms of a Broken Spirit is their third album in only 2 years, and that's not a lot of time to write an album. But very clearly they were inspired by the many positive reactions to that last album, and have said in multiple interviews that they've never felt more free in their writing process, and that the reception to this last album opened them up so many new creative avenues. Sam even went as far as to say that some of the songs on here will bother long-term fans because they stray so far from the path. And I really wonder what songs he was thinking of when he said that, because while there are new influences in this album, overall a lot of the things that we see on here have been done by Architects in the past. So already it's very apparent that the starting conditions for this album, low time, fan expectations and new creative opportunities influenced the making of this album. That being said, how are the songs on this record?
What's in the box?
The most surprising thing that I found when I opened this box of an album is just how similar a lot of the material is to their last album. After the announcements and interviews, I was honestly expecting like slow love song ballads or synthcore and not more of the same. But if we take a look at this track list, there are a handful of songs that could have been on For Those That Wish to Exist with no changes whatsoever. And even the rest of the album, although glazed with new influences, is at its core still 90% similar to Exist. This similarity of course means that we have some great craftsmanship on here. We have great guitar work, bouncy riffs, nice breakdowns that aren't too heavy, a great vocal performance coupled with great lyricism as well, and the occasional catchy chorus. So just by the virtue of how similar this is to their last effort, this album is already pretty good. But while they had a lot of time and new ideas for Exist, the same style, albeit good, doesn't work quite as well on this new album, and not as consistent. Because the other surprising thing I found is just how similar a lot of this material is to other artists' work. Because every second metalcore band essentially copies what Architects did, a lot of people seem to forget that Architects themselves are, in a lot of what they do, let's say, highly inspired by Bring Me the Horizon. And I don't mean this in a negative way. They've always put their own spin on it, and they've created some of the best metal to ever core. That being said, there are some moments on here that remind me a little too much of something that other artists have already done very similarly. Like Spit the Bone, which has the beat and chord progression of an alternative rock anthem by a band like Shinedown or 3 Days Grace, even though we get one of the very rare blasts right at the end. Another instance of this is the first single, When We Were Young, which is just 100% the Beartooth song from like the 2014-2016 era. All the way up to the chorus, that's where we see the Architects influence coming back in, but from the drums, vocal delivery, guitars, riffs, even the beginning, it's just straight up a Beartooth song. We've also come a very long way from Doomsday to Doom Scrolling. Another cut that is pretty catchy, pretty good, but listen to this part at the end of the song. Am I the only one who has to think of this little song by, who could have guessed it, Bring Me the Horizon? Another track, All the Love in the World, has synths in the chorus that sound awfully similar to the ones that Bring Me the Horizon had on their song Medicine. But more importantly, the repetitive All the Love in the World sounds instrumentally and even vocally, strangely, straight up like a 3 Days Grace song. Within all of these tracks, the majority is still clearly identifiable Architects. But it's still noticeable that there are also other things in the pot. And I know why. I think the main reason that we see so many other influences so clearly visible on this new project is because they are not boxed into a specific sound anymore by their fan base, whose approval their livelihood depends upon. This results in them being able to pull from all sorts of direction, all sorts of different artists, but as they do that with so many different types of music, they only manage to scratch the surface with most of them and don't really have enough room to develop their own spin on it enough. That doesn't mean that there are no great moments on here. A new More Low Ground is my personal favorite that goes into a lot of directions that I didn't see coming at all, and that solo is one of the best things that they've ever done, hands down. Burn Down, My House, is a slow and looming cut that I personally really love. And all those songs that wished to exist on a different album, they still kick ass. Lastly, in a turn that I did not expect, the last song and unofficial title track is not a slow, beautiful, orchestral tearjerker like on their last album, but instead the heaviest song on the album, with some insane riffs, with some great vocal deliveries by Sam, absolutely going into the screams and into the growls, and the song builds so much urgency at the end. That's a really great tune. Being free of genre expectations is great, and some of the best modern music is inherently genre bending, so I'm excited to see what that path holds for Architects, especially because there are so many great moments in that direction on this record. I can understand why the excitement of new opportunities led them to writing, recording, and then releasing this album as quickly as they did, but I can't help but feel that there's a lot of untouched potential here that I would love to see them go into more in the future. I told you not to skip here, go back and watch the rest of the video. And if you did, thank you. Consider subscribing while you're here. There's a lot of good on this record that I will most definitely be revisiting, but there's not as much great on here in comparison to For Those That Wish to Exist or Holy Hell. Classic Symptoms of a Broken Spirit is a 7 out of 10 for me though, so I'll admit the title of the video is a little misleading. But if you watched the video, you already knew that the title was just a little bit of clickbait. And if you haven't watched the video, then go back